It started subtly, a feeling more than a fact. My wife, Sarah, mentioned it first. She'd gone down to the basement to get a jar of preserves and came back up looking pale. Did the stairs feel longer to you? She asked, a nervous laugh in her voice. I dismissed it. We were both tired, stressed from work. Of course, the stairs hadn't grown. Stairs don't just grow. The next day, it was my turn. I went down to check the circuit breaker. The familiar wooden steps under my feet seemed to stretch on for just a moment too long. Usually, it was 12 steps down. I counted 13. I shook my head, convinced I must have miscounted all these years. But a cold knot of dread began to form in my stomach. That night, our son, Leo, woke us up screaming. We rushed to his room, and he was sitting bolt upright in bed, pointing at his closet. The counting is wrong, he whispered, his eyes wide with terror. It's not 12 anymore. My blood ran cold. He couldn't have known what I'd counted. I tried to soothe him, telling him it was just a bad dream. But my own words felt hollow. The following evening, I stood at the top of the basement stairs, a tape measure in my hand. The door felt unnaturally cold to the touch. I took a deep breath and clicked on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, but it didn't seem to reach the bottom. I let the tape measure fall, its metal end clattering down the steps. It stopped, and I peered at the number. It read 14 feet. Yesterday it was 12. The stairs were getting longer. Each step was stretching, elongating into the abyss below. And then I heard it. A sound from the bottom. A soft, wet, dragging noise. It was faint, but unmistakable. It was the sound of something heavy being pulled slowly, laboriously, up the steps. A rhythmic scrape, and then a pause. Scrape, and a pause. It was counting the steps. It was climbing. We started barricading the basement door at night. We piled furniture against it, anything heavy we could find. But every morning, we'd find the barricade slightly shifted, and the air would be thick with the smell of damp earth and something else. Something foul and ancient. The counting in the dark continued. 15 steps, then 16. The dragging sound grew louder, closer. We could hear it through the thick oak door now, a persistent, scraping ascent. Leo stopped sleeping. He'd sit in the hallway, his little blanket wrapped around him, just staring at the basement door. He said he could hear it breathing on the other side. Sarah and I were shells of our former selves, haunted by the sounds from below and the fear of what would happen when it finally reached the top. One night, the scraping stopped. The silence was more terrifying than any noise had been. We huddled together in the living room, listening, waiting. Then came a new sound, a slow, deliberate tapping on the other side of the door. Tap, tap, tap. It was at the top. It had reached our floor. It was no longer climbing. It was waiting. Then, a splintering crack echoed through the house. A long, dark fissure appeared in the center of the door. The wood groaned, bending inward. Through the crack, I saw something move. It wasn't an eye, not a hand. It was just a patch of sleek, pulsing darkness. The tapping changed. It became a frantic, powerful banging, shaking the entire doorframe. We backed away, grabbing Leo, our hearts pounding in our chests. The smell was overpowering now, a stench of rot and cold, damp stone. The door was about to give way. It had counted all the steps. It had climbed all the way up, and now it was coming in. The flickering neon sign of the Sleepy Hollow Motel was the only thing breaking up the endless dark of the highway. I was exhausted, road-weary, and just needed a place to crash for the night. The clerk, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with boredom, handed me a key for room 13. Not superstitious. I just shrugged and headed down the creaky outdoor corridor. The room was basic. A bed, a small TV, and a large, slightly tarnished mirror hanging on the wall opposite the door. I tossed my bag on the bed and went to splash some water on my face in the cramped bathroom. When I came back out, I glanced at the mirror. For a split second, I thought I saw my reflection turn its head to watch me before I did. I blinked, rubbing my eyes. Must be the exhaustion playing tricks on me. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulling out my phone, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I looked up at the mirror again. This time, there was no mistaking it. My reflection was staring right at me, but its eyes were wider, and a slow, unsettling smile was spreading across its face. A smile I wasn't making. My heart started hammering against my ribs. This wasn't real. It had to be a hallucination, a waking nightmare brought on by driving for 16 hours straight. I stood up slowly, keeping my eyes locked on the mirror. My reflection stood up too, mimicking my movement, but its smile was gone. Now, its expression was one of pure, cold hatred. I took a step back, and my reflection took a step forward, pressing its hand against the glass from the inside. The air in the room grew cold, and a low humming sound seemed to emanate from the mirror itself. I tried to rationalize it. A trick of the light, a warped piece of glass. But then my reflection's other hand came up, and it started to tap. Tap, tap, tap against the mirror. The sound was faint at first, then grew louder, more insistent. It was beckoning me. I wanted to run, to scream, to get out of that room, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. The reflection's smile returned, wider and more grotesque than before. Its eyes were no longer my own. They were black, empty pits. It raised its hand and slowly, deliberately, drew a finger across its own throat. A silent, terrifying promise. That's when my paralysis broke. I scrambled for the door, not even bothering to grab my keys or my bag. As I fumbled with the lock, I heard a sound from behind me that will haunt me for the rest of my life. A sharp, cracking noise. I risked one last glance over my shoulder. A hairline fracture had appeared on the surface of the mirror, and from that crack, a long, pale finger was beginning to push its way through. I didn't wait to see the rest. I wrenched the door open and sprinted out into the night, the indifferent neon sign of the sleepy hollow motel flickering behind me. I drove until the sun came up, never once looking in my rearview mirror. I don't know what was in that room or what it wanted, but sometimes, when it's late and I'm alone, I'll catch a glimpse of myself in a reflective surface, and for a terrifying, heart-stopping second, I see it. The cold, hateful stare, and that terrible, terrible smile. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there. Have you ever taken the last train home? That strange liminal space between the day's end and the dead of night. For most of us, it's just a quiet, slightly eerie ride. But for the commuters on the Red Line, the last train is a prelude to a nightmare. It all started on a Tuesday night. The final train of the evening, number 714, was scheduled to pull into Union Station at 12:05 a.m. The platform was dotted with the usual late-night crowd, tired office workers, students cramming on their phones, a couple holding hands. The digital sign flickered. Arriving, the familiar rumble echoed down the tunnel, growing louder and louder. Headlights cut through the darkness, and the train screeched to a halt. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The train was completely empty. Not a single soul was on board. The station agent, a veteran named Frank, frowned. This was unusual. He checked his logs. Train 714 had departed from the previous station, Northgate, fully loaded. Where did everyone go? He radioed dispatch, reporting the ghost train. As he spoke, a low sound began to emanate from the dark tunnel the train had just left. At first, it was faint, like the wind, but it grew, and a handful of people on the platform froze, their blood running cold. It was the sound of screaming, not one or two voices, but dozens, a horrifying chorus of pure terror, echoing from the black maw of the tunnel. It was a symphony of agony, filled with pleas, shrieks, and cries that seemed to claw at the very air in the station. The sound was so raw, so visceral, that people clapped their hands over their ears, but it did no good. It felt like it was coming from inside their own heads. Frank, pale and trembling, tried to rationalize it. A technical glitch, a prank through the PAR system, but the screams were too real, too desperate. They sounded like the final moments of people being torn apart. One of the students on the platform, a young woman, collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. The screams were relentless, washing over the station in waves of pure, undiluted fear. The police were called. They searched the tunnel, a mile-long stretch between Union and Northgate. They found nothing. No signs of a struggle. No blood. Not even a dropped wallet or a forgotten scarf. The security cameras at Northgate confirmed it. Dozens of passengers had boarded train 714. They had simply vanished between stations. For 3 agonizing hours, the screams continued to echo out of that tunnel, finally fading away just before the first light of dawn. The next day, the story hit the news. The city was in a panic. The Red Line was shut down indefinitely. Missing person reports flooded in, 112 of them, all linked to that final, fateful ride. The investigation went nowhere. Experts from every field were brought in. They analyzed the acoustics of the tunnel, checked for seismic activity, and scanned for any kind of anomalous energy readings. They found nothing. The tunnel was just a tunnel. The train was just a train. The people were just gone. The Red Line eventually reopened, but no one ever takes the last train anymore. The transit authority cancelled the 12:05 a.m. run permanently. But the story doesn't end there. Sometimes, late at night, when the station is deserted and the air is still, security guards and maintenance workers report hearing it. A faint, distant sound drifting from the darkened red line tunnel. The sound of a train that isn't there. And the ghostly echoes of its long-lost passengers, screaming for all eternity. So if you ever find yourself alone on a subway platform late at night, and you hear that faint rumble from the darkness, run. Don't wait for the train. Just run. Because you might be about to hear the last sounds the passengers of train 714 ever made. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more tales from the dark. Stay safe out there. It started on a Tuesday, just like any other. I was making coffee. The morning sun was spilling into the kitchen, and my phone buzzed with a new voicemail. I almost ignored it. Who leaves voicemails anymore? But something made me press play. A crackle of static, then a voice. Her voice. Sarah, my wife, who had been gone for 3 years. Mark, can you hear me? It's so dark in here. I can't see. Please, you have to help me. My heart stopped. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. It couldn't be. A prank. A cruel, twisted prank. I checked the number. Unknown. I deleted it. My hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I told myself it was a recording. Some sick air thing, but the fear, cold and sharp, had already taken root. The next day, another voicemail. Mark, why didn't you answer? I'm scared. I can hear things. Scratching sounds. It's getting closer. Please, find me. You promised you'd always find me. That last part broke me. It was what I whispered to her in the hospital, right at the end. I'll always find you, I'd said. No one else knew that. I didn't sleep the night. I just stared at the ceiling, replaying her voice in my head. The desperation, the terror, it was real. I called the police. But what could I say? My dead wife is leaving me voicemails. They'd think I was crazy. I felt crazy. Day 3. The voicemail came earlier this time. It's here, Mark. It's in here with me. Oh God. The scratching. It's not scratching anymore. It's digging. It knows my name. It's whispering your name too. Help me. For God's sake, help me. The message cut off with a scream. A scream that echoed in my silent apartment. A sound I'll never be able to forget. I couldn't just sit there anymore. I had to do something. I drove to the cemetery. It was late, the moon casting long, creepy shadows across the gravestones. I found her plot, the grass still neatly trimmed. It was peaceful. Too peaceful. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I knew what it was. With a trembling finger, I played the new message. This time, it wasn't Sarah's voice. It was a low, guttural whisper. A sound that felt ancient and wrong. You can't help her. She's with me now. Then, a familiar sound started. A soft, rhythmic thudding. It took me a second to place it. It was the sound of digging, of earth being moved. And it wasn't coming from my phone. It was coming from the ground, right beneath my feet. From Sarah's grave. I didn't wait to see what would happen. I ran. I didn't look back. I just ran and ran until my lungs burned and the cemetery was far behind me. The voicemail stopped after that night. But the silence is somehow worse. Because now, every time my phone is quiet, I can't help but wonder, did it stop because she finally escaped? Or did it stop because there was nothing left of her to call for help? I don't know what was in that grave, and I don't want to know. All I know is that sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I can still hear it, a faint scratching sound, coming from just the other side of the wall. And it's getting closer. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoy these kinds of tales, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. Stay safe out there, and maybe check your voicemails. Have you ever noticed how someone blinks? It's one of those tiny, automatic things you never think about, until you're forced to, until it becomes the only thing you can see. That's what happened in the town of Havenwood. I arrived there on a whim, a travel blogger looking for a quiet, picturesque spot to write my next piece. Havenwood seemed perfect. Too perfect. It started subtly. A friendly wave from a neighbor that felt rehearsed. A smile from the cashier at the grocery store that didn't quite reach her eyes. I brushed it off as small-town quirkiness. But then I noticed the silence. Not a peaceful quiet, but a heavy, expectant silence. People moved through the streets, went to the cafes, tended their gardens, but there was no idle chatter. No laughter echoing from the playground. They just existed. My first real jolt of fear came a few days in. I was sitting at a diner, trying to make conversation with the waitress. A young woman named Clara. I had seen her the day before, laughing with a friend outside the post office. Today, she just stared, her movements stiff. I asked her about the daily special, and she just pointed a finger at the menu, her eyes fixed on my face. And then I saw it. She blinked, but it was wrong. It was slow, deliberate, like a reptile shutting its eyes against the sun. It lasted a full 2 seconds before her eyes opened again, just as slowly. It was profoundly unsettling. I started watching everyone. The mailman, the librarian, the old man who sat on the park bench every day. They all did it. The slow blink. It was like a glitch in their programming. The more I looked, the more I realized it wasn't just the blinking. They didn't speak unless spoken to, and even then, their responses were clipped, monosyllabic. They moved with an unnerving grace, but without any wasted motion, no fidgeting, no scratching an itch. They were perfect copies, but the humanity had been scooped out. I went to the local library, digging through old town records, searching for any mention of a plague, a cult, anything. The librarian, a woman who now blinked with that same agonizing slowness, watched me from her desk. I found a collection of old newspapers from about a year ago. The headlines were normal at first: town fairs, high school sports. Then they stopped. The last issue was dated October 12th. After that, nothing. It was as if the town's history just ended. That night, I saw my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, standing in his yard, staring up at the moon. I had spoken with him on my first day. He was a cheerful, talkative gardener, proud of his roses. Now, he just stood there, motionless. I waved, and he slowly turned his head. He didn't wave back. He just stared, and then he did the slow blink. My blood ran cold. The Mr. Henderson I had met was gone. This was something else wearing his face. I decided I had to leave. I packed my bag in a panic, my hands shaking. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I couldn't become one of them. As I crept to my car under the cover of darkness, I saw them, figures standing in the windows of the houses, silhouetted against the dim interior lights. All of them, watching me, their heads turned in perfect sync as my car started. As I sped out of Havenwood, I looked in my rearview mirror. The entire population, it seemed, was standing in the middle of the main street, a silent, staring crowd. They weren't chasing me. They were just watching me go, and in the faint glow of my taillights, I could see them, all together as one, blinking, slowly. I never wrote about Havenwood. How could I? Who would believe me? But sometimes, when I'm talking to someone, I catch myself watching their eyes. I find myself counting the seconds of their blinks, because I know what it means when it's too slow. I know that the person you think you're talking to might not be there at all. Thanks for watching. If this story chilled you, be sure to subscribe for more.